Alright guys, I just did a review on the last two chapters of Naruto, and then I did a whole video on part 3 of Naruto coming out, my opinions on that. Had to do a review now on One Piece, the latest chapter of that, 766. So, again, after so many arcs of One Piece, the author still does tragedy flashbacks a justice. Like, he pulls this out of his head, and this was one of those times where I was just like, how can you make this flashback truly touching? Like, you have to pull something out of your head amazing for me to really get behind this, because it's just like, it seems like Law grew up with this family, this Don Quixote family, and he was taught by them everything he knew and loved by them. And it's just like, how do you turn from that into hating them and wanting to kill them all? It's just like, you really have to pull some heartstrings. And he also does a great job. I don't think he does a perfect job, but he did a decent job. I mean, was I bawling to tears? No, but I definitely felt it made logical sense why he would feel some loss now with Corazon dying. I'm sure he's gonna die, and so in this chapter it really sort of illustrated that. Again, I don't really very much like these sort of flashbacks in terms of. I mean, I like the flashbacks in certain ways, but I don't like tragedy that much in terms of manga, because it's just like, sometimes it's unrealistic, sometimes it pulls on your heartstrings by really just in terms of One Piece, at least, it's mainly just destroying innocence, or painting someone who's really good-hearted, who does some great good-hearted things, and then just slaughtering them, or just it's always on some sort of unrightful killing of some sort. And it is somewhat of a naive sort of depiction of reality in a way, because it's like, it doesn't really happen always like that. There's obviously a lot of unjust killing of good people in the real world, but generally it's just like, Having said all that though, as far as One Piece goes, this chapter I felt was pretty, it's what was expected to happen, and yet he did throw in a little bit of spice. From a scale of 1 to 10, I wouldn't put this as a rating of 10 out of 10. I would put it at a solid 8 out of 10 chapter. And the reason being, like, there was some spice thrown into it. You see Corazon coming in, and or technically you expected him to like, you thought he would die from the clincher in the last chapter, but somehow he managed to kill all these people and escape, and finally get the fruit to Law. And then he's wounded and he dies, and then we see the whole Virgo thing, which was somewhat unexpected. That was some spice thrown in. I was not expecting that at all. I thought, maybe Corazon would just die there, and then Law would just be like, I'll avenge you, and then go on his own way. And then Don Quixote somehow escapes the ambush with his family. Instead, we have here this whole thing with, by the way, that whole scene where you see the whole Don Quixote family walking in on shore onto the island, and in his one hand he has the Denden Mushi, which is attached to that little child, holding it in the air. And then on his left side he has like he's holding one of the Marines by the head, just like effortlessly. And then he's got the whole backdrop of all these Don Quixote family members that are all so strong. It's just like amazing. It's hugely awesome depiction. But back on track though, I felt that whole thing where they come on shore and they realize something was up, and then you see that Corazon was severely injured, but he survives, and then you realize that he wants you to deliver something to the Marines so everything will go well and they'll be captured, and then Virgo comes along, and it's just like it's a very weird sort of thing, and I really like that sort of spice thrown in there because you know Virgo is dead now, but then you realize Virgo didn't really get his just desserts when he died anyways, but he did because he's dead now in a way, and the reason he didn't really get his just desserts was because when he died he was somewhat just like uh, eh, even if I die you will be ruined, so it's somewhat like that, but still it still pulls at your heartstrings when you see Virgo crushing his legs into Corazon. So generally that was a chapter in a nutshell. The strings went up from Don Flamingo, and he enacted Birdcage. So the chapter ends with a sort of cliffhanger, but it was somewhat like you can somewhat predict what's going to happen in the next chapter pretty assuredly actually, because Corazon says I'll probably be able to get Law out, but I probably will die in the process. How? I don't know how, but he's gonna do it somehow. And that's pretty much gonna be what happens. I predict that's gonna happen, and then Law's gonna, I hope the flashback ends then, and then he goes on his way, and now he wants to avenge everything and kill Don Flamingo. Again, there's this whole philosophy thing, which if I have time, I'll talk about on my main channel, youtube.com/WillYouLaugh. That's YOU. But generally, what that is about is the whole philosophy of how people kill other people because they feel like that's the greatest punishment they can give someone. But at the same time, it's like, is that really true? Like, you see in stories in real life, oftentimes, epics and other things, they want to avenge a death or avenge a wrong by killing an enemy, but then that remarks on that sort of brings up the whole debate of whether death is truly the biggest punishment you can give someone, because some people want to die, others aren't having great lives, or others would have greater torture or pain, or I guess you could say suffering by being caged or locked in jail forever rather than being executed immediately, or in our cases just they would be more miserable, just bored and alive. So that's a philosophy thing that I'll leave to my other channel, my main channel. But it is interesting how this whole sort of thing plays out, and I definitely think that this chapter was a clear depiction of how the author is definitely making things up generally as he goes. I mean, sure, he may have vague ideas of the future in mind, but whether or not he lays out the storyline one chapter at a time, or 10 chapters at a time, or 100 chapters at a time, I do think generally he does make it up as he goes. At a maximum, probably like 30, 50 chapters at a time. There's no way he lays out the story 100 chapters at a time. Why? Because when the whole Law versus Virgo fight occurred and he finally killed Virgo, that whole death thing and an execution thing was not so epic, and Law didn't really give so much emotion to the execution of Virgo there and then. And I feel like the reason was because the author of One Piece had yet to really come up with what had occurred in the latest chapter, which was this whole thing where Virgo did so much wrong to Law. He had yet to come up with that. But generally, though, I feel like this whole thing with Virgo and Law, it is still somewhat just now that you think about it. And I guess the final thing to remark on is the whole thing that Law can do virtually nothing with his powers, because it's not. I mean, it's somewhat sad because with other devil fruit, boom, you can start fighting immediately. If you had something like the flame fruit that that was lost by I think it was Ace Porcus the Ace. That was something that was like, okay, I know what I can do with that. I have flame now. But again, with something like maybe Luffy's ability or Law's in this case, you know, it's somewhat sad that he can't do anything. He can't heal people immediately. So it is somewhat like, okay, you have to develop the surgical skills, the medical skills, knowledge of all the cells of the body, and then you know over time you develop other skills like you know, subtleties with your ability to be able to control everything and rearrange body parts, and little specialty techniques with your ability. So he doesn't have any of that, and it's gonna cost him because he you know he can't do anything. Probably Corzon's gonna die. It's a tragedy, but we already know what happens because we generally know, because it's a flashback, we know Corzon's dead now. And this whole thing with you know, Corzon being, I mean, it really does pull at your heartstrings because you know that Corzon's like this man who's like the younger brother of Don Flamingo, and he is one of the Ten Rebuto in terms of blood, and he's this good guy trying to do good things, and then he's got this brother who's just completely wicked and evil, and that's something on its own, and it really does pull at your heartstrings because it's like, hey, not all Ten Rebuto are bad people. This was a man who lived a great life, and that whole final panel of this chapter, again, very heart touching. He does a great job with this. I mean, I feel like Ichiro Oda, the author, he does a better job of painting these sort of heartstring pulling tragedy flashbacks, not necessarily always flashbacks, but tragedies, than a lot of even novelists do. And so generally, you know, that's what happens. You know, the final panel of him just smiling, and when he's about to let you know Law escape somehow, still, you know, very touching, and at the same time somewhat illogical because it's like, I never really fully grasped why he wanted to help him. It didn't really make logical sense. You want to go all this way for this little kid who wants to stab you, wants to kill you, and I mean, I guess you have some likeness because you suffered something similar, but again, it's just like too much, I guess. I guess it makes somewhat sense. And again, I never really understood the whole thing with him, you know, and Law, I mean, not Law, Don Flamingo being so corrupt. Don Flamingo, I mean, he is corrupt and evil in a lot of ways. He just wanting to kill everybody, take control of the whole world. He thinks he's like royal blood and stuff, and he's so much better than everyone. But at the same time, it's just like, okay, I guess you're wicked. So what of it? But it does make general sense at the end of the day. And the final panel reminded me of what happened with Robin's flashback, and that giant who taught Robin how to laugh, and how he died laughing pretty much the same way. And again, this whole One Piece thing is based around laughing in a way and smiling. Just think of Goldie Roger and Luffy. They're always smiling. So that's what we want to say in a nutshell. Very much enjoyed the chapter. Overall, you know, wasn't the best chapter. As always, like, favorite, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching.